Okay, hello there, and tell me something. Come here to me real quick. Tell me something.
How in the heck are you doing?
And welcome to another Yesterdave, a show where we like to travel back in time to see just what gaming was like in the 80s and 90s, courtesy of me, a 40-year-old man with a 6-year-old boy who doesn't give a rat's arse about any of this. So you're gonna have to listen to me instead.
Vroom vroom, take my hand, both of them, as we travel back in time to revisit something that's very near and dear to my heart, the era of the early 90s arcade racing game.
And in particular, my unfettered hyperfixation with, in my opinion, the king of the vroom vrooms, USA. So I'll see you at the starting line, where I'll drive you to the finish. We're running out of car metaphors already, so let's get this over with.
Picture it. It's 1994 in a small seaside resort in Northern Ireland.
I know what you're thinking. No, you're not funny.
Called Port Rush. It is a stunning summer day, and you've come down to enjoy the amusements and get yourself a big blobby ice cream. The smell of the beach and ocean waves bring a hypnotizing calmness to your brains. And then you see me with my mum and dad.
This is my feckin' story after all, not yours, so I'm hijacking it. Get out of here.
The town is primarily a holiday resort, and so it used to be strewn with tons of dilapidated old arcades and amusements, and it would be here that I'd get a chance to check out the latest arcade games. In particular, racing games.
In a world where people bitch and moan about 60 frames per second, 2K versus 4K, it's really hard to articulate just how big a leap the industry was about to take back then.
Although the concept was flirted with before, by the early 90s, we were ready to jump entirely into a whole new dimension, and not in a Ninja Turtles Dimension X sort of a way.
Shadow, these polygonal racing games are simply mind-blowing.
In my experience, most racing games that I had played looked like this, whether it was Super Mario Kart or Micro Machines at home, or even Jaleco F1 Grand Prix Star 2 in the arcade. God, that's a mouthful. Scenery was usually nothing more than a flat background that never got closer, as the occasional barrel, sign, or tree staggered its way past you.
Kinda like driving around Dallas.
I mean, look at it. While games like the wonderful Outrun gave me a good sense of speed, thanks to some visual trickery with the road, I always felt like I was driving through deep space, never to reach my final destination as I stared into the abyss as random scenery popped up 10 feet in front of me.
Oh god, maybe this is Dimension X.
A horrible place where humans just shouldn't be, lest they go mad.
So imagine walking into Phil's Amusements one day, and in amongst the usual 2p one-armed bandit machines and other coin-pushing kerfuffery, this little bad boy sings out to me.
My God, it was simply beautiful. The whole package. I spat out my damn push pop. I had no idea how graphics could get better than this. Here was a fully realized 3D world unlike anything I'd ever seen before. It wasn't even close. Fully texture mapped and with no pixelation. Was this real life? It felt like I could step into the screen and get immediately run over. Everything was perfect. The visual rumbling of the cars, the varied scenery, to the sweet camera angles, to the frankly ripping music. It was an incredible package, like something from the future. To this day, very little gets me pumped up quite like the do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do of Let's Go Away.
Honestly, it'd be the perfect entrance for like a NASCAR-themed wrestler, where the first few instantly recognizable notes get the crowd really pumped as he walks out. Incidentally, I decided to look up if there were any car-themed wrestlers at any point in time, and here you go, meet Thurman Sparky Plug. Parody is dead, guys.
So, I begged my mum for a few quid to give it a go, and I got behind the wheel. As the green light shone and the game took off my training wheels to finally let me play, I couldn't help but think one thing. What the? This game is hard! This wasn't Mario Kart! The game has an insane learning curve that simply cannot be picked up from 1 or 2 sessions. The cornering was finicky and hard to muster. The wheel would literally try to rip itself out of my hands and throw me around like a squirrel hanging onto a ceiling fan. and if you crashed, it was unlikely you'd even see the end of the course. How upsetting! The most gorgeous game in the world, and I was no good at it. I just wanted to see more.
I couldn't believe that an arcade game that, at the time, cost me £3 whole to play had the audacity to say, you're going to have to get better if you want to see all of me. I wanted it to give me everything it had on a platter like some sort of overexcited adolescent. Give me my cake and Game Boy, damn it.
Chocolate cake, Game Boy, and me.
I tried playing it on and off again over the years, constantly coming back to it. It called to me like how Nelly the Elephant's herd called to her. I couldn't get it out of my head. It gave me a real fixation with colourful arcade racing games, and I spent years looking for the same buzz. Over the years, I eventually got Ridge Racer for the PlayStation, Screamer for the PC, Top Gear Overdrive for the N64, and I adored these games for their own reasons, but the one thing I never ended up getting was a Saturn.
The Sega Saturn was, at the time, seen as having bad juju. It seemed overwrought with issues, and it really didn't sell well in Europe at all, which only compounded all the problems.
Every Saturn port seemed to be inferior to others, and aside from a few Sega first-party titles, it seemed inundated with, well, crap. The Saturn almost felt patronized in a way by the games playing media, like when developers like Lobotomy managed to get stunning ports of Quake and Power Slave, or Exhumed as it was known back home, running on it. The magazines would pat it on the head like a toddler that had sniffed too much glue.
Good boy, buddy. You actually managed to do something. Well done.
Of course, besides the excellent Computer and Video Games magazine and Games Master magazine, I was also gleaning this information from the surely impartial and mature official Nintendo magazine, who often referred to it as the Sega Saturn.
Really cool, guys.
The Saturn was a mystery to 11-year-old me. Why does it exist?
I was the kind of kid that would just start talking about this kind of thing at the dinner table, and I'd turn to my parents and be like, "Why is the Sega Saturn so bad?" And they'd be like, "Do you ever stop talking about this? It's really annoying." And I'd be like, "Yeah, well, at some point this is going to be diagnosable, so up yours."
Despite what the magazines would say, it had an underdog appeal that I couldn't look away from, and it was fascinating.
Fast forward, and I mean fast forward.
2 decades. Now I'm an old fart with a little change to spare, and I just read about the Saturn port of the original Daytona USA. Sure, it didn't look perfect, but surely it'd give me those high-speed hijinks I was yearning for as a tiny wee babby. So I went on Marketplace and behold! Truthfully, I'd never actually seen one of these in the flesh before I bought one. It's a little smaller than I thought it'd be, but it's sleek, it's sexy, and it's mine.
Frame rate be damned. It was all here. The beautiful Sega blue skies, the roar of the cars, the ripping soundtrack, the beautiful reds, greens, and blues and pinks that all coalesce into a sort of primary school tapestry. The frickin' difficulty.
I had assumed after about, 20 years, I might have developed the patience and wisdom to finally sit down and figure this bad boy out. But nope! It was still as hard as a zoo file in a petting zoo, and I once again blamed it on the game. Too hard to control, too clumsy, too unresponsive. Bah!
So what do you do when that's not good enough? Why, you obviously buy the remastered version that Sega brought out later, because they too felt the original Saturn version was too clunky.
In 1996, Sega released Daytona USA Championship Circuit Edition, a reimagining of Saturn Daytona by the guys behind the excellent Sega Rally, and it came chock full with new tracks, a solid 30 frames per second frame rate, more approachable handling. Surely this would fix all my woes, and perhaps be the ultimate Daytona experience. But wait, what the hell is this? I'll be honest, I kind of like this cock rock intro music, but it's not Daytona. Where's the goofy piano soundtrack? The in-game colors are all wrong. The handling was far too sensitive.
For all its bells and whistles, it felt like I'd asked someone to just put a little salt in my chicken for flavor, and instead they covered it in toothpaste. Why change it?
To continue this ridiculous dinner metaphor, if something's off, usually I'll just shut up and eat it. But not this time. This was not the Daytona I signed up for. The magical memories of Portrush were slowly fading and being replaced by horrible, traumatic thoughts. At nighttime, I'd hear that familiar melody, but now it was like some jacked up Radiohead permutation that made me feel like I had the flu.
Daytona, let's go away. Daytona.
Maybe I just wasn't destined to love the game that I admired so much.
So what do you do when that's not good enough? Oh, I pondered and I pondered, and then...
Holy crap! Why didn't I think of this before? Back in 2000, Sega released a version of the game for their shiny new Dreamcast machine, with a silky smooth frame rate that in some ways looked shinier than even the arcade original. So, I whisked out to find myself a used Dreamcast and a copy. My Daytona dreams are still alive! Surely, I'd finally have the chance to feel the sun give me a big smooch in that big old Sega blue sky, as I stared wistfully into the distance, imagining the white sands of the nearby beach, while looking kinda like Carl Sagan on Cosmos, getting horny over interstellar space. What?
It's kind of hard to describe the disappointment of playing Daytona on the Sega Dreamcast. It's kind of like being promised a dog for Christmas, except you get one of those plastic nodding dogs that you're ironically meant to put in the front of your car. Probably make this game better, to be honest.
Again, crucially, for me, the tone wasn't right. The colors were muted and gray. The music was better, but crucially, the handling was far too sensitive. Even the slightest turn sends your vehicle into some careening nonsense that makes this game very unfun and... I don't even want to talk about this version. I realize I'm starting to sound like a broken record here, but every new version I was finding was getting farther and farther away from that arcade classic that I so coveted.
So again, what do you do when that's not good enough? I surmise that out of all the versions that I owned and had access to, the original Saturn clunky 1995 port was probably the most faithful.
After all, it had the music, it had the colors, it had the freaking vibe, man. My only barrier to entry was my own lack of skill. So, I got down to the crunch, and I put some damn time in it.
I spent hours and hours sweating over every corner until the magic, it started to reveal itself.
Daytona USA is a rare title. Arcade games are quite often distinctly shallow, offering a shock and awe experience with little to understand by the way of mechanics, more akin to a fairground ride that's just meant to tickle your grundle and get you out of there. They are the definition and possibly the reason for the phrase pick up and play. Daytona, by contrast, is not one of these games. My continual understanding of Daytona mechanics has had me look up online playing guides for a fucking racing game.
Where the main tip is usually hold go button to go, idiot.
Course tips and details, and really do my homework to further understand my approach to every single damn corner on each track. For example, this beginner track looks easy enough. It's a damn hoop. But if you don't put the time in, that third corner is always going to come out of nowhere, requiring you to amply slow down and begin the process of drifting around the corner, which you can do in multiple ways. If you sit down and try for yourself, which I hugely recommend doing, you'll discover that succeeding at Daytona does not initially mean coming first in a race, but simply being able to complete all the laps.
After a lot of initial frustration, the first time you actually manage to finish a race, you feel like a proper big racing hardman, like Conor McGregor, but in a car, and he's not fighting, so more like Michael Schumacher.
Much like taking your first steps at the gym, you will begin to follow your own journey with the game, taking great pride in the leaps and bounds that you make. It's maybe also the first game that has encouraged me to use the stick driving mode instead of the automatic. Automatic is great for new players who just want to have a spin around, but the manual drive offers greater speed, and the beautiful nuance of the relationship between those hairpin turns and sliding your manual gears into place at just the right time will make your car pirouette in a sort of exotic dance, gliding you around those corners if you can stay the course and barrel your way straight ahead like a bullet in a chamber towards the next straight.
This is starting to sound like one of those novellas my wife reads.
It is the ultimate replayable game. Whether you want to whiz around the beginner course or do some more studying of the later courses, each playthrough will provide you with an entirely new series of events that are almost entirely dependent on your reactions and skill. It's like practicing an obstacle course or navigating a cruel ocean in a galleon. And after that first incredible time you've actually come fecking first in a race, you will start feeling like you're actually spending time under that gorgeous sun and Sega blue sky, lapping up the rays and the glory as the music cheers you on.
The whole experience feels like playing Chariots of Fire through some Bose headphones that are attached to your scrotum. In a good way? As the song itself says, the course is really tough, but it's a beautiful day, so good luck.
This is your Karuchi. The course is really tough. But it's a beautiful day, so go back. Daytona. Let's go away.
But that wasn't enough.
So what do you do when that's not good enough? I'd just begun to get good at this game after decades. What more could I want?
I started scrambling, looking for ways to emulate the Sega Model 2 arcade board on my PC, with some luck, but the controller support was dreadful. As I did my research, though, I discovered a beautiful thing. Beautiful like a pearl in the desert, or a Big Mac on top of Mount Everest. Sega had released an arcade-perfect port for both the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 back in 2011.
Oh my god, this is finally it!
The Saturn version kind of felt like weight training with old, toughened dumbbells out in the muddy backyard. It was industrial and resourceful, but now I was being gifted a gold membership to the swankiest gym around.
I had a PS3 downstairs, so I figured that maybe, I don't know, Sony wouldn't mind if I borrowed a copy of Daytona USA off the internet with an emulator.
And sure enough, it was a snap to set up with my Microsoft controller. The moment had finally arrived. I can't tell you the unbridled, giddy joy I have had perfecting my skills on this version of the game. What was once blurry, pixelated, and minimal was now crystal clear, and the 10-year-old inside of me,
Excuse me, hello, police?
was finally able to do a few laps around the game of my Sega dreams. And this time I wasn't shite.
Much like a real car, I'd finally got my license.
Now, looking back, the Saturn version is definitely functional, but it's really not a patch on this. Going from 20 frames per second to 60 frames per second made me feel like one of those deaf kids that got their hearing aids turned on for the first time. Except with eyes.
So glasses, except you can't give a blind person glasses. That does fuck all.
The silky smoothness only made me appreciate even more the majesty of seeing such a game in the arcade nearly 20 years beforehand. It really was so ahead of its time. Nothing could match it in the home until the Dreamcast nearly 7 years later, and even then the Dreamcast version ran worse. To have this version in my home was an honor, like having a feckin' phoenix make a nest on the roof of my house.
I need to lay off the glue.
But, and I hate to say it, that wasn't enough.
What could I possibly be missing? I have the ultimate port of one of my favorite arcade games in my office. What else could my spoiled arse need? Have you guessed it yet? No, it's not udders, you fool.
I had zero idea if this was going to work with a PS3 emulator, but I did a little research on steering wheel and pedal combinations that were available for the console at the time, and I found a Logitech G25 for sale on Marketplace.
So I hit the seller up, and honestly, the story gets a little weird from here. It was about 10:30 at night, and this seller tells me that the steering wheel actually belonged to his dad. And I was like, "You're dead?" And he's like, "Yes, I'm a child, and I want to get rid of this PlayStation 3 steering wheel because it's dumb and old." And then he tells me he would like to trade it for an iWatch. And I'm like, "Oh, okay. We do have an old iWatch lying around downstairs, so on paper, this works out for me. I could get a steering wheel for my Daytona USA setup that very evening. That's good. Meeting children from the internet at 11 at night, not a good look. I told him, please, God, bring a parent or guardian to come meet me, and I'll get the wheel.
He said, of course, I'll bring my dad, so I felt comfortable enough to do it. So there I am, driving through the quiet apartment blocks of Frisco, Texas, the streetlights rolling over my face like some sort of Zelda enemy that only comes out at nighttime. I finally got to the apartment that I was told to meet up at, and I sent a message and then waited for this dad to show up.
Bleep bloop, said my phone. It was a marketplace message from this damn kid, and he told me to meet him outside where he was being accompanied by a definitely real, totally normal adult. Finally, a tiny little shit with a Fortnite t-shirt shows up, and he's definitely being accompanied by another kid that is totally just pretending to be a grown-up. I am pissed. I don't know whether to stay in my car and just open the window or get out of the car and tower over them while feeling like some sort of Slenderman creature as I try to get out of this as fast as possible.
Oh, look, he's a pedo! Dad! Pedo,
You're not a pedo. You're definitely not a pedo.
I figured that sitting in the car might make it look like I'm trying to solicit them with drugs or something, so I should probably get out.
As soon as I was handed the box, I peeled out of there as if I'd just started a new round of Daytona. Also, the kid messaged me again saying that the iWatch I gave him didn't work with his current iPhone. That's what you get for tricking me, you little bastard. I raced home to do some more racing, and sure enough, once I set it up and tried to race, it worked like a charm. Again. Somehow the Daytona experience for me had reached another new level of majesty. Learning the basics with a controller was great, and I was shocked to learn that it really did translate to skills on the wheel. I don't know how many times I can escalate this feeling, but really, it seemed this time I had finally reached paradise. But it wasn't enough.
What do you mean it wasn't enough, Dave? You have a literal makeshift Daytona arcade machine in front of your computer! I know. And I really hate to say it because it makes me sound like the most miserable fucker in the world to have to deal with. But there really was something missing. Something that people rarely pine for because it rarely actually happens to anyone. What could I be missing? I know I sound like a total prick here, but honestly, the marquee. The art, the feeling of being in an arcade. How could you possibly even think about replicating that at home? What kind of asinine nitwit was I? What kind of dragon am I chasing at this point?
It was around this time that I discovered Arcade 1-Up, who made 3/4 size arcade machines for the home that you can kind of build yourself like IKEA furniture. After owning a few, I really enjoyed them, but I was beginning to realize that I wasn't playing them so much. They were kind of for show at this point.
Wouldn't it be amazing if I could cram my Daytona setup into one of these and have my own Daytona arcade machine?
I took the PS3 from downstairs and I was delighted to discover that Daytona was still available in the online store. I stripped an old Arcade 1-Up and I found some Daytona USA custom Arcade 1-Up art online. It was happening! With the help of a friend and a good deal of time, I now finally got to build a beautiful, custom Daytona USA arcade machine to call my own.
It's stunning, really. What feels like a complete show of utter idiotic hubris has given me the greatest joy in the entire world. And I am so thankful that at any time I want to practice my skills on the speedways of Daytona, I can sit down and do it with this beautiful mini arcade machine. This game has felt so out of reach to me for so many years in so many different ways. From being bloody terrible at it, to playing a ramshackle Saturn version of it, to finally being able to play it in a super enhanced form like this.
Like bringing an old video into an AI upscaler, I was now playing a 1993 racing classic in high fidelity and with some actual skill. My journey to find the real Daytona USA had now ended. I could practice my heart out all day in hopes to someday face a challenger.
A challenger, you say? As much as I will never, ever give this prized possession away.
It wasn't enough.
All right, come here with me. Let me show you something. Welcome
to the Daytona arcade.
I'll spare you the details on the arcade right now, because I definitely want to do a whole video on this thing at some point. But what I'll tell you is that the arcade one-ups started becoming far too expensive for what they were. And, you know, after customizing a few of them, I kind of thought, what if I went on Marketplace and found actual arcade machines for half the price? Broken ones. And kind of tried to fix them up myself. So, I did.
The Daytona machine, I just saw it online and I thought, God, surely I've done enough. Surely I don't need that. But I couldn't help but think about it. It was like an addiction. In building the Daytona USA arcade one-up, I had indeed caught my dragon, but this dragon right here was like catching smog.
Some guy was selling it online for $500 in Austin, and I sort of thought, you know what? That is a lot cheaper than a brand new arcade one-up. So I said, fuck it. If you're gonna finish a midlife crisis, do it right. Get it done with.
I just love it. Every single part of it. Even the scratches and the breaks in the chassis. Even the stuff that kind of needed repaired. It tells a very storied history, and I'm utterly spellbound that it somehow found its way to me. This is the end of the road. Sometimes I just come out here and I sit in it without playing it and have a beer, just to utterly marvel at it. It is the summation of a lot of audacity, a lot of I can do this in the face of it being such a preposterous idea.
I come from a very working class family, so to even be able to entertain this sort of thing is not something you would ever have considered in your lifetime. Too crazy. Even if you could afford it, like, how are you meant to fit it inside your house? Incredibly, and with the help of my wonderful wife and some friends. Eventually, this dilapidated old garage became first a podcast room, and then it was a gym for a while, and now it's an arcade. The Daytona trip has come full circle, and I love this game so damn much that I could give it a hug. In fact, you know what? I'm going to right now.
I love you, Daytona. Thank you so much for indulging me in what seems like an incredibly boastful video on paper. But I just loved this video game so much that I just wanted to share my epic journey with it over the last 30 years. It's been a lot of discovery, and I think I can finally say that I can rev up that old Hornet car and drive it into the sunset like I always dreamed. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch, and I hope if even a smidgen of the joy that this machine brings me can somehow find its way into your day, then it's entirely worth it for me. After all, that's what Yesterdave is all about, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Okay.
My glasses. I did it so hard, my glasses changed.
That's right.